Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear us okay. Welcome to the launch of our Careers Toolkit, incorporating the campaign for men in childcare and looking broadly across the early years and childcare sector. We've got a packed afternoon session for you, which will involve some interactive sessions and some discussions with key panelists, key representatives across the sector, where we know we're going to hear and find out an awful lot about their own journeys. So let's find out a little bit about the Careers Toolkit. I'll start off by introducing myself and my colleague Stacey. So I'm Janet King, Sector Manager for Education and Childcare. And I'm joined today, as well as the panelists that you can see, I'm joined by Stacey Mann. Stacey can just give us a little wave. There she is. And Stacey is our subject specialist in early years and childcare. As I say, we're absolutely delighted to be here today and to be joined by such an esteemed panel. Thank you, Stacey. I think it would be really good just to tell you a little bit about the aims and intentions of today, and in particular this session that is hopefully going to be one of many, where we will meet with you, with colleagues across the sector, to be able to talk about the Careers Toolkit, to think about careers in early years and across the sector, and the diversity of that. We want to challenge the conception or the concept of and the perception of males in childcare. We want to look at that, and we want to think about the difference and the gender imbalance within our sector that is still stark, at least 90% plus of females in our sector. So the Careers Toolkit has been introduced to actually raise an awareness of the T-level. We're thinking about what is a T-level. This is a good opportunity with the launch of Education and Childcare to be able to think about what the T-level qualification is about. It's going to be useful for students. It's going to be useful for staff at all levels, so staff in schools, colleges, universities alike. And it's also going to be useful for career staff. And we're really hoping that that will be embraced in a way that gives opportunity to look at this career across the gender imbalance. Our Education and Childcare T-level is new. It's being piloted this year, and we're very excited with the feedback that we've had. And students will work their way through a core knowledge of learning about babies and children from 0 to 19, and then they will specialise into an occupational specialism. One will concentrate on the early years educator and will set the journey to early years educator within early years settings and beyond. And the other occupational specialism will do exactly the same, but looking at assisting teaching. The occupational map that we have will also be part of our Careers Toolkit. And within that, we will be able to signpost not just to the different diverse roles within the sector and those different occupations that students can go on to do and progress, but also this is reassuring for parents. This is reassuring for people to know what their destination and journeys can be. The idea today is to be able to introduce people to you who have gone on that journey, and Stacey will be able to tell you about that later when she introduces the panel. But we're hoping that this becomes an organic Careers Toolkit. It will evolve, it's interactive. We want these sessions to be informative for staff, but also informative to students too. So within our toolkit, we're welcoming employer voice. We're welcoming centre feedback, and we're welcoming HEI involvement. And of course, woven through this is the very important role of men in childcare and the diversity that that brings. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you, Janet. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce our wonderful panel today. They are going to all introduce themselves with their own little slide, and we'd like you to just introduce yourself, talk about your role, and most importantly, your journey to get to where you are. So telling us a little bit about your inspirational journey, which I'm sure will be fantastic. So we're starting off with Jo. So I will mute myself, Jo, so you can introduce yourself.
Well, hello everybody. I realise I don't look very like that photograph anymore. It's because of lockdown hair. But it's really delightful to be here, and I feel especially pleased because this is a natural outcome, this event, of the research, the large research project that I've been involved in for just over 2 years, which has been all about the recruitment and support of men in the early years. So I work at Lancaster University, and it's really gender that has brought me to the early years. It's this very specific interest in how to break down gender stereotypes and how to do that by starting with the workforce. And that brought me, about 15 years ago, to undertake an evaluation with a really inspirational setting in the Northwest that were trying to tackle this. They were an early excellence centre. Those of you who've been around pretty long time may or may not know about early excellence centres, which were before Sure Start centres. But there was some really good work being done. Penn Green, Sheffield Children's Centre, there was good work being done to try to get more men into early years at the time, quite often through working with fathers. So that's what brought me into this area. And since then, I've kind of dipped in and out of it. I also do research work on children and young people's social relations in school. But the gender work has had this very specific focus on trying to rationalize why men are important to have in the early years workforce, because there's very different arguments produced about why we need men. And that I think is really important to get right. And I've also, in this recent research study that was funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, I've been looking at some of the obstacles to recruiting men and some of the kinds of support that can be offered. So that's basically what I've been doing. The website that we have for the project, I would strongly recommend you to look at. And if I was a bit more familiar with this particular technology, I would quickly be typing into the chat the words gender I, as in gender early years education, genderi.org. But you might, if you're listening, make a note of that. Maybe somebody who's better with the technology than me can do that, because it's very simple. And what you will find there is the end of project report. So you'll see all about our aims and the findings. And you'll also find our training toolkit there, which has got some very specific recommendations for the recruitment and support retention of men in the early years. We worked with a partner some of you may know well, Jeremy Davis from the Fatherhood Institute, and we also worked with a partner in Norway, in Trondheim, because of course Norway have the best record of all countries in the world, being just under 9% of their workforce have men. So we worked with Professor Kari Emilsen at Queen Maud's University, Trondheim. So they were our partners in this research study.
Thank you so much for that, Jo.
Okay. More will emerge.
That's so brilliant. And okay. The links to all of the things that you have just mentioned are going to be on the Careers Toolkit, and they will be available for everybody at the end of this session, where we've got our Careers Toolkit launching, and you'll be able to see all of that wonderful work that you've done. And it's just it's really, really interesting. And I'm sure it will come up again when we do our questions to panel later on as well. So thank you so much for that, Jo.
Thank you.
Next, if we can have Janine, if you can introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit about your journey too.
Thank you. So my name's Janine Ryan, and my current role is I'm Head of Department at Doncaster College University Centre. The department is Education, Health and Community Practice, which is a really vibrant portfolio area. I've worked there now for some 12 years. I started off as a lecturer, and my career has developed. Currently, obviously I'm a head, and within my role as a head of department, I'm charged with developing programs of study for undergraduates. Just recently, we're working on a really exciting project, which is a foundation degree for children and young people's mental health and well-being. So I think that's probably the part of my job that I enjoy the most. Our portfolio, as I say, is quite diverse and exciting. I've written programs for those who want to specialise in working with children and young people with special educational needs and disability. And the portfolio ranges from foundation degrees to top-ups to masters within those quite specialist areas. When I started at the College University Centre, we had something like 50 students on programme within the early years portfolio, and now I'm really proud to say that we have over 450 students. As a college-based higher education provider, we pride ourselves on probably giving opportunities to those who, one, are local, but two, maybe are second time round students, and probably not non-traditional students, so focusing on widening participation. We're very much geared to supporting those who are new into early years, but also those who are partway through their career as early years practitioners or specialist workers, and enabling them to develop their knowledge and skills to make better their own roles within, making a difference to children's outcomes. When I think about where I started, I go back a few years before, I was trained in early years and the primary sector, and I very much enjoyed my time working with children, and at that time I had a young family myself, and as they sort of grew up, like many women probably do, find that they maybe have a bit more time. I'm not sure that I'm always correct in saying that, but I did kind of refocus on where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, and I moved into adult education. So I worked at the local Sure Start Centre, working with parents, and I just absolutely loved it. And I think, when I think back of the first courses that I ran, which were sort of 6-week course, a couple of hours on an evening, to where I've come to now, I think, goodness, that is quite a journey. But I do certainly get an awful lot of enjoyment and pleasure in supporting people in progressing in their careers. One of the interesting things really for me was when I moved into working at the college, I undertook my master's, and my master's was in it was a project that focused on men in early years, and I remember the title very distinctly. It was called Who Says It's a Man's World? And I undertook research across the area where I live, which is North Yorkshire, and subsequently I joined Jo on some of her research trips, which we were just talking about before we joined the broadcast today. So it's given me an opportunity to present my research on an international level, which was really exciting at the time. And I think as my career's developed further, I've sort of come away from producing, being behind current research, and possibly more into development of programs of study, but I'm still loving what I do, and long may it last.
Oh, thank you, Janine. What a lovely journey. And I'm really interested in the mental health programme that you're developing at the moment. I think that will be much needed in the current climate especially. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And now we're going to move on to Jill. So Jill, you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey too.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Jill Mason, Head of Training and Development at Kids Planet Day Nurseries. So we're a nursery group of 54 nurseries based mainly across the northwest, but in East Midlands, and our latest acquisition is in Shrewsbury, so we're spreading further around the country at the moment. So my role is to head up the training academy, and I've been with Kids Planet since 2018, so almost 3 years now. So basically, I came along to the academy to set up the whole training and department, and to get accredited for a range of qualifications, and to offer apprenticeship delivery across mainly level 2, level 3, and soon to be level 5. So we started off just doing some internal training with our own team. We had about 40 apprentices, and last count this morning we're up to 250 apprentices. So it's been an incredible journey at Kids Planet. I actually started off as a primary school teacher. We've got similar journeys, I think. So I was a primary school teacher for a couple of years, and then actually got involved in adult education myself and worked there for quite a few years. I opened up my own training centre in Liverpool, delivering community-based adult learning, really. I've always been very much community-focused, and set up a couple of community day nurseries as well around the Merseyside area. I moved on from there to work for a large awarding organisation as an advisor for early years, health and social care and health qualifications, and developed a wide range of qualifications, worked with a lot of stakeholders in the sector, and had a really great time there for about 10 years. Then returned back to working in the centre in Liverpool as an enterprise director, really, and I did a master's in social enterprise there, always being very much about building capacity within communities and working with people in early years and working with shore staff and children's centres and things like that. So commenced on a PhD around vocational pedagogy, and sort of looking at the whole deal that people get in the vocational world compared to the academic world. And then I joined Kids Planet with obviously the view to set up the academy, and that's where I am now. And from the men in childcare point of view, we've been lucky to have received some funding from Greater Manchester Local Authority to look at gender bias and to look at stereotyping and to look at equality and diversity within apprenticeships. So our project, working with Jeremy and Mighty and Fatherhood Institute, is to look at how we recruit more male apprentices into early years, which is having a great success already. We've already recruited quite a few men. We've set up a male-only sort of Facebook page, and we've just won an award last week, the World Skills Award, for challenging some gender stereotypes with our Men in Childcare Award. So it's going really, really well at the moment, and I'm glad to be part of this panel today.
Thank you, Jill. There's so much that I want to pick apart within that and have a chat with you privately about. And congratulations on your award. That's amazing news. Thank you so much. And last but by no means least, Paul, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your journey?
Yeah, hello, good afternoon everyone. Great to be here with such a fantastic panel this afternoon. So my name's Paul Lawler. I'm an outreach officer here at the University of Cumbria. I've been in my current role now for around coming up to 3 years in August. Mainly in my role, I work with our Institute of Education here at the University of Cumbria, in which we offer a number of undergraduate teacher training degrees, which qualifies individuals to teach year groups from ages 3 right up to 11. So those early foundation stage, key stage 1 and key stage 2. And we also offer a 4-year course which works in specialism with inclusion and SEND. We also offer a range of PGCE courses here at the University of Cumbria as well. So mainly working with the Institute of Education, as I mentioned, getting out and about to different schools, colleges, events, speaking to people of all ages, backgrounds, genders, and really letting them know about the options available here at the University of Cumbria. But even more than that, just trying to break down those barriers and those stigmas that people might have in their head that they feel that maybe they can't go to higher education for whatever reason, and a lot of the time it is invisible barriers that they've constructed within their own conscious. I was at one point that way as well. I thought maybe because I was a bit older when I went to university, I came to the University of Cumbria in 2015 to begin my teacher training course, that because I was 24, that ship had sailed and that I wouldn't be able to do so. But that was a complete invisible made-up barrier that I had in my head. And now it's quite funny looking back at that and on the journey that I've sort of went on from being in that position, thinking that maybe I can't apply to university, it's haven't went, it won't be for me, to now being in my current position, supporting and helping individuals on their journey and taking those first steps into higher education. So a bit about my background. I came to the university, as I said, in 2015 to begin my teacher training course, my undergraduate primary education course with qualified teaching status in 2015. The reason I came to the University of Cumbria in particular was because I worked as a teaching assistant back home in Belfast, and there was quite a lot of the teachers within the school that I worked in that actually gained their teaching status from the University of Cumbria. So that really enabled me to think that this would be the place that I wanted to come to. And after graduating in 2018, I thought that because of those sort of barriers and obviously wanting to be someone that can help people to take those first steps and to support and guide them on their journey into higher education, I felt that that was something that I was very passionate about, and it was my reason for wanting to go into primary education to begin with. It was all about nurturing talent and fulfilling potential, and now I feel that in my current role I'm helping to produce the next generation of teachers that will go on to do really great things. I had 3 great years at the University of Cumbria. I was one of 3 male students on the course out of a group of 70 in our year group at the Carlisle campus. So obviously getting more men into education and early childcare is something that I am passionate about, and something that hopefully by taking part in the panel today, and also looking ahead and supporting NCFE cash with the toolkit, it will be something that we'll be able to break down and sort of move away from and change that gender imbalance somewhat.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Paul. That was so good, and exactly what we're trying to achieve with the Careers Toolkit. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
I'm going to pass back to Janet now, who's going to start our questions, and I will just turn my video off for a second as well, because yeah, I'm just going to turn my video off for a sec. So I'll pass it over to Janet.
Thank you, Stacey, and thank you so much. What inspiring journeys! You know, everybody is going to be able to be wowed by that, and unique experiences, but experiences that do exactly what the Career Toolkit is aiming to do, to look at those different occupations, to look at the different routes, to look at where the journey can take you, and the fact that this journey is something that we can all embrace and all get on board with. So, you know, we really hope the intention of the Careers Toolkit is really to look at some of the myths. Paul, you were talking about some of the invisible myths there that you kind of saw. That's a bit of a strange thing to say, isn't it? The invisible myths that you believed were in place, in terms of, you know, being a mature student, maybe thinking about going into a career that was female dominated and so on, and how that made you feel. And the Careers Toolkit really is to challenge some of that, and just to think about that, to sort of wallow in the richness of Joe's research and Jill's research and the work that Janine's done as well, and to think about, you know, why are we not talking to a wider audience? Why are we in this situation? So, I mean, there's lots of things, and the research obviously will bring so many different things and challenges to discuss, but all of those things are things that we want to take on board in the Careers Toolkit. And there's a section in there that looks at the occupational map, and that occupational map just sort of plots the journey from level 1 and beyond, and to all the different sort of diverse occupational roles, of which there will be more that aren't on there at present. But it's that idea of inspiration and aspiring others to do that, and sometimes to see the footsteps that other people have taken and been so successful with, and happy with, you know, and an enjoyable career that's also rewarding is something that's great to hear when you're a student, or when you're thinking about your next steps on that journey. We're hoping that the career toolkit will be organic. I said that before, so it will evolve. So research papers will be on there. It will be signposting to podcasts, video clips, all the things that have been contributed so far. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has contributed so far to what we hope will be something that just reaches more people, that helps to raise an awareness of the T levels, to raise an awareness of education and childcare, but most of all to speak to people who are thinking about a career in education and childcare, but who might be conscious of some of those barriers and some of that discourse that sometimes puts people off, or perhaps it wasn't even you know, an option that they were talked to about. So that's interesting. I'm going to start with some questions, and Jill, I'm going to send this first question to you. So here you go. Brace yourself. Here it comes. So this one is about key messages for students. So what would your key message be to somebody who was thinking about a career in childcare, education and childcare, but they weren't sure? Any words of inspiration?
Just do it, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, what I would recommend is maybe try it out first, maybe volunteer, work experience. There's lots of programs such as traineeships if you have no experience and you're fit in that category type of thing. Speak to other practitioners, ask people about it on all those different levels, all the different roles that, you know, you might encounter, you know, as an early years as a practitioner, because there's no one size fits all in early years, as we know. So it's a job where you get to be creative every day, use your own initiative every day. No day's the same. So if you're that sort of person, you know, you just want to nurture young children and you just want to see them grow and be rewarded by all of that, then absolutely just go for it, just do it.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'm going to open that up to the panel. So if you were, you know, thinking of a word of inspiration and you were speaking to somebody now who was a little bit hesitant, a little bit reluctant, but who wanted to know about the career in education and childcare, we've heard from Jill, just do it. I love that. Would anybody like to share anything else for that particular question before we move on?
I would really like to, if I can. I was just going to say that one of the things that I would always say to anybody wanting to work with children is that if you've got any other interest in your life or passions, I mean, my own son, he was very interested in music, and so when he started working with children, he loved playing his guitar to them. I've had others, you know, others who have been undergraduates on our programs where they've had a particular talent in art, and so that, you know, the sort of the craft elements has really enabled them to enjoy their jobs. So I would say, you know, and I think, you know, when I mentioned my son, he trained to be a forest school practitioner, and he went out to China to work out there. And I think what a fabulous opportunity, you know, for a young man who, you know, his degree was in film and TV, and he didn't really know what to do with that. So I think, you know, using his degree, he was able to go on to work with children, but use those things that really, you know, interested him and made him. I remember him saying to me, what I love about working with children is that every day I come home with a smile on my face.
That's lovely, Janine. Thank you. If I can bring Jo in, thank you.
Yeah. I hope the convention is okay of just putting up a big hand. So yes, I would also say just try it. But you could make life easier for yourself if you're going to just try it by finding somewhere to try it where you think there's already really good support for men in the early years. So you could try to find a setting to work in that's got at least one man, or you know, where you know that the staff are going to be very supportive. And I think I would also say that from the research I've done, the things that I hear that men enjoy about the job satisfaction statements I've collected over the years, they are very much about making a difference to children's lives, seeing the rewards of teaching them something and seeing them change, getting praise from parents, and also this idea of, I think it reinforces what Janine has just been saying about her son, the idea that you can be very flexible as an early years practitioner, that you know, early years practitioners are very flexible people, and there's all kinds of skills and aptitudes that are required. And I've had people tell me that that's what they really like about the job. One minute they're building a den, the next, you know, they're comforting a hurt child, the next they're doing some, you know, number work, and there's a huge variety. So making a difference, enjoying the variety of the work, those are the two sort of things that have come out of statements about job satisfaction.
Thank you, Paul. I was going to bring you in on that anyway, to share any inspirational moments, but please do.
Yeah, just touching on what the other three panelists have said so far, obviously it is a really great profession to go into, especially with the way the curriculum is set up is that it is very adaptable and very flexible, as Joe has said, that you can bring your passions into the job, as Janine's son has obviously done in his role. And that's something that I was really it really infused me, the idea of sort of the way you could adapt the learning and make it relatable to the children, and also relatable to you, that you're using your own experience and things that are interesting to you, because obviously you are a role model to those children. So if you're showing a clear interest and a clear passion in what you are teaching, it's going to instill that lifelong learning in the students that you're working with as well. And then building on what has been said as well, speaking to someone that's in that role, speaking to a current teacher, maybe speaking to a couple of different teachers. The primary school that I worked in as a teaching assistant before coming to England, coming to Cumbria to begin my teacher training course, that was actually my primary school that I went to as a young boy. And it was just, it was funny how things panned out, that my year 5, year 6 teacher actually went on to become the head teacher at that school, and he was actually the person that offered me the job to come in for 2-3 days a week, because at that point the school had started to implement iPad learning, so utilizing iPads and becoming an Apple school, so to speak. And I think it's worked out very well now with everything that's going on at the minute, that they did introduce that. But that teacher, Mr. McGreevy, he remembered me from being a student in the school and being really well versed in computers and having really good computer knowledge, which I actually won an award for in year 6. And for him to remember me and to get in touch, some of my younger siblings went on to go to that school after I had left. But that was really sort of the thing that set me on that pathway to obviously, I always loved education. I was always, I wouldn't have said I was a high flyer, but I always gave my best and I always tried my utmost in anything that I did. And I think that's really important, isn't it? That as long as you do try your best and you give it your all, you can't have any regrets. But yeah, speaking to someone, doing your own research, there's a lot of tools out there now, such as the Getting Into Teaching website, the Times Education Supplement, the Department for Education website, looking at the national curriculum, looking at the teaching standards, and really thinking, is this something that I want to go into? Is this something that I would be passionate about? And obviously for everyone, we have went through education, so we have had experiences. And did you enjoy that experience? Is there a teacher that really made you infused and passionate about learning and really made your days at school exciting? And do you want to try and go on and do that yourself in your own way? Obviously one size doesn't fit all, and people will have different ways of doing different activities. And I think that's a really great way that the national curriculum is set up now, that we can make the learning accessible and interesting for students who maybe have different interests within the class. So yeah, I just wanted to add that a little bit. So obviously do your own research and try and speak to someone who is in that role. Obviously at the minute it's a bit difficult to get experience, but hopefully down the line you will be able to get some experience in the early years setting in a nursery, in a primary school, or a youth club. There's so many different avenues that you can go into. Forest schools was mentioned as well, so there's a lot of great things that you can go on and do, from obviously the initial T level or the level 3 cash that you complete, and then also going into higher education as well afterwards if you choose to do so.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Paul, I'm going to stay with you. So if you're representing, if you like, on the panel, a key interest in males in childcare, like everybody else on the panel, but can you tell me what you think the key challenges are for males entering childcare as a career, and why it's important that we challenge those?
Yeah, so obviously gender imbalance in the workplace across all sectors is something that over the past 50, 60, 70 years, even further than that, has started to improve with early years in childcare. While strides have been made in that area to get more men into those vocational roles, there is still a long way to go. Obviously, I touched on at the beginning that I was one of 4 students who were male out of a group of 70, so that was a really small proportionate number on my degree course. And likewise, when I was a teaching assistant and I was going out to external training events and so on, there was a real lack of male presence within that. And I think it is really down to, as I mentioned in my introduction, those invisible barriers and those stereotypes that are in place that we need to try and break down. And I think the ways in which we can do that is obviously by having vocational courses such as the T level, such as what Kaiser are offering, and making it accessible to male potential students, and letting them know that there's a lot that male teachers can bring to the role, in terms of their own interests and maybe their own backgrounds as well. And I think it's important for young boys as well, particularly in those primary school settings, in those earlier settings, to see that education isn't just a female thing. It's a gender neutral thing. It's a worldwide sort of, everyone should see the benefit of education and really strive to get involved. And yeah, I think it's down to sort of lack of information and lack of experience, and maybe a lack of people saying to them, yes, you can do this. Yes, this is something that is available to you. And I think as well as that, sometimes pigeonholing can be a sort of detrimental thing to some male individuals who are thinking about going into primary education and early years, and thinking about how they'll be perceived by parents, other members of staff, and that they need to be the quote unquote man because they're the male member of staff. And I don't think it should be that way. Obviously, everyone's equal and everyone will have different things to give in different ways, and that's not to say that we should just pigeonhole men to do sort of PE and not do, for example, a stereotype of maybe art, and break that down and have female members of staff doing the PE lessons and male members of staff doing the circle time and that type of thing, and really letting them know that there isn't just that you're pigeonholed to this one part of the curriculum or this one part of teaching. I think is really, really important. So just a quick summary, obviously, maybe a lack of information, a lack of experience, and a lack of sort of male images in marketing and so on and so forth. But I think higher education institutes and the schools and colleges now are doing a lot better job. Obviously, we see it on the TV now quite a bit. They're getting into teaching adverts, and we usually see some male male teachers involved in that. And I think simple things like that, just like with everything, it's breaking down those barriers and it's making it a bit more inclusive and a bit more realistic for people.
Thank you very much, Paul. Jill, can I just bring that back over? You talked about the work you did in Greater Manchester, and you know, you're obviously working day in, day out with young children, with practitioners. Are you finding male recruitment has increased? Are there more males coming your way?
Yes, there are actually, and I think that's to do with a lot of what Paul said there, basically getting the information out there. I don't think a lot of men have even considered a career in early years a lot of the time. So when we're going out and doing more and more sort of a careers event, although they're virtual at the moment, we're saying, have you considered it? No, it's not even been in my psyche to think that way. What we also find as well, because the project's aimed at maybe more mature men as well, who may have reconsidered their career, and what we're finding with the lockdown, with COVID, a lot of men may have been at home looking after their own children, or the status of early years as an essential workforce and things like that really made people rethink their values and what is important in their careers. And we've got a lot of men saying, you know what, I was a chef, I was a builder, and actually I want to, can I get into childcare? Am I too old to be an apprentice? Things like that. Absolutely not. No. So we've got a really good mix of men coming through at the moment. So we've changed our marketing materials, again, picking up what Paul said, to make it more sort of gender friendly, and sort of taking our marketing in places we wouldn't normally go. And even for our own parents, you have a lot of parents, you know, coming through our doors and things, saying, no, have a taster, have a little bit of a work experience trial, things like that. So we've got a really good range of people coming through, and we've got 4 men starting next week as well, and they are from age 16 to 50. So yeah, good range coming through.
That's brilliant, thank you. Oh, Paul, do you want to come in there?
Just when Jill was talking there, it made me sort of think as well that with the sort of, I think it comes down to life experience as well, doesn't it? It's something that, as Jill mentioned, we're seeing a lot more mature men now going into early years and childcare training courses. And it's something that I've seen as well, and I've experienced being at the University of Cumbria. I don't know if it's similar for other universities. I haven't really looked in depth at the research somewhat, but what I found was for the undergraduate course, which is mostly aimed at 18 to 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, there wouldn't have been that many male students on that course. But then when you look further ahead to the PGC courses that we do offer, the gender imbalance narrows quite significantly, and some groups and some years we do see more males in the PGC courses than females. And I think it's down to that life experience, and it's down to sort of having those additional experiences and somewhat, and becoming a father maybe is a game changer for a lot of people. But it was just something I wanted to add in.
No, that's great. Janine?
I just wanted to add really on what Jill and Paul have just said there. From my own experience at Doncaster University Centre, we had 2 mature men join our programme a few years ago. One was a hip hop DJ, and he was out DJing in the evening, looking after his 2 young children in the daytime. And he loved it so much and was so fascinated by their development that he decided that he was going to bite the bullet, and he retrained to be an early years practitioner. He went on to do his PGC. He's working in a school in Sheffield now, doing fabulously well, and he's in early years, which is where he really wanted to be. And then the other gentleman, similar situation, similar but dissimilar in some ways. So another gentleman joined us, and he had spent 8 years in Afghanistan with the Royal Marines, and obviously had spent quite a long time away from his family. And when he came back, he was the primary carer for a period of time, but again was fascinated by, he said it was all about the neuroscience and all the, you know, all those scientific elements that I think sometimes, you know, people are not maybe, you know, aware of, but that's really what attracted him to learn more about children. And you know, he joined us. He had such an interesting background, because he'd trained men in Norway in 30 degrees, you know, survival. So when we were doing our forest school activities and practicals with him, he was, you know, way ahead of us in terms of his skill set. So we do remember him very fondly. But I do think that, you know, particularly within the lockdown, some men may well have really enjoyed that time they've spent with their children, a time which I think some will think was been a very precious time. And I think that possibly with uncertainties with you know, the job market and the current economy, it might be the time when more mature men are thinking about what are the options, and what can I do.
Absolutely. Jo, thank you.
Just to inject a new element, I think, into thinking about challenges, one of the things we found was the way that careers advice is being delivered, and that now in schools careers advice it seems to be much less than it used to be. It's very fragmented. It feels as if it happens in a very haphazard way. And also we found the kind of way it was being delivered, I think, is quite a challenge, because I think often in school what happens is that careers advice is used as a sort of way of motivating pupils to improve the standard in their work. And very often the careers advice is tailored to what is guessed about what individuals seem to want. It's very sort of individual student centered, and therefore it's very difficult to get in there to suggest something unfamiliar. I think that's the real challenge. We know that a lot of men come into this work because somebody, quite often a female relative, an aunt, or, you know, there's been experience with nephews and nieces or whatever, and somebody somewhere has said, look, you might be good at early years work. So how do we create that sort of opportunity? How do we suggest the possibility?
Yeah. I mean, listening to everyone now, you know, we think about, yes, this is important. Of course, we've got to continue with these messages, and there's almost a sadness from me as well in terms of, you know, it's something. I'm going back to those invisible barriers. I'm going back to the myths that are involved, and the fact that it's almost a female privilege, you know, all of those things. And of course, we want children deserve to be cared for by people who genuinely can nurture and support and inspire the way that you're inspiring us today. And I think that is something that's a quality, you know, in males and in females, and for people who can create. And it's almost as if we're unpicking that female privilege, you know, and very interesting debates and topics. Thank you very, very much. I'm just going to pass over to Stacey, if I may, for a question. And Stacey, while you just do the next question, I'm going to look in the chat, and we'll see if we can bring in some of the chat questions as well.
Yeah,
thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. It's also interesting, and from different perspectives as well. I think it's really interesting. So thank you all for joining in on these conversations. Really building on what we've just been talking about. I think we'll start with Jo with this one, if that's okay with Jo. Can you reflect on any male inspirational students or staff and the differences that they've made to the sector and their own career journeys?
Yes, yes, certainly. I can think about this in various ways and at various levels. I mean, firstly, I think a lot of the men I've talked to, both on this recent research, the Gender Eye Project, and previously in smaller scale research, I think courage. You know, I think men working in the early years are crossing a traditional gender boundary, and they have to be brave. And I can, you know, I mean, I think of all the men I've spoken to who are doing that work, and I think they all express a kind of courage. So I would say many courageous men that I've spoken to. I think if I was going to pick one or two individuals, I mentioned a long time ago I worked in an early excellence centre in the Northwest, and there was a fantastic male early years teacher there who was doing really good work with the men in a very traditional working class area where there was sort of very traditional white working class male employment. And it was fantastic what he was doing to bring men into the setting and help them feel safe and feel creative there. There was a wonderful initiative that was based on getting men to come in and use a sound studio to create lullabies for their babies and young children. And that I found really inspirational, because the focus of the initiative was on what the men could do for children, for very young children. It wasn't, as was so often the case at the time, getting the men into the setting to dig the garden or do the woodwork. So I was inspired by that. And obviously there's a lot of inspirational men who are current advocates in this area of work. David Wright in Southampton has done a huge amount of work on trying to get men into the early years. And Jeremy Davis, who some of us know, also. So, there are some inspirational male individuals who themselves have built up a really strong advocacy profile here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had lots of experiences of working with male practitioners when working in day nurseries, and also training those practitioners who have sometimes had a really tough time, and that's come down to a supportive workforce or not, as the case may be. So, sort of how the manager and the other colleagues support that practitioner when sometimes parents do question why there's a male changing their child's nappy, or whether he's the right person for the job. And I remember really clearly a man in our training session. He was doing a CPD training session of parent partnership, and he burst into tears and said, "I've had another complaint from a parent of one of my key children, but my manager is on my side." And he'd been in so many positions where his manager hadn't been on his side and had taken the preference of the parent and said, okay, well, he won't have your child as a key child. And he felt really either challenged or supported in different spaces he'd been in. So have you had any experiences with practitioners who have worked in, male practitioners in the sector, who have had that sort of discrimination from colleagues as well? I'd say that to Jill, maybe. Jill, you're working with a lot of apprentices, aren't you, and a lot of people that are working through professional development.
Yeah, absolutely. We as part of the Men in Childcare project, we did a survey of all our men, and every single one reported some form of discrimination against the practice, and mainly from parents, to be fair, about nappy changing and things like that, and those stereotypical things that get said. So we really revamped our gender policy on things like that, and we actually really supportive of all our men there. So basically, we will not differentiate between our male and female practitioners. Everyone has the same responsibilities in that room, and we stick to that, and just basically try and speak to parents and educate in that way, really. So it's getting better, but obviously those things still do exist. Yeah.
Education being key. And I'm going to move on to our final question now, to just bring the whole conversation back to our careers toolkit and inspirational stories. So at the core of all of your journeys and the students that you've discussed, there's been a focus on professional development. How important do you think it is for a well qualified and quality workforce? And shall we start with Janine for that?
I think absolutely imperative to have a highly skilled and trained workforce, because they're working with the most precious commodity ever, small children, and their outcomes and their future is in the hands of the people that work with them. I have seen absolutely fantastic practice, I have to say, that just brings joy to me. And I think that's what we need. You know, some of my graduates, they don't necessarily undertake a degree to better themselves in terms of their, well, not straight away anyway, in terms of their own career. I've had many students who are early years practitioners, and they love their job, and they undertook a degree to enable them to do their job better. And I think that is really, you know, testament to what a fantastic workforce we have got. Of course, there are others who will have the aspiration to become room leaders, managers. We have had some of our graduates go on and set up their own settings, self-employed, as you know, as owning their own nursery, or running a childminder's business. There's all sorts of options, I think, out there, but certainly at the heart of it is this ever-growing knowledge that we are privy to within early years, informed by research every which way we turn. And I think that when we're able to engage with that research and use it to develop our practice, then it's an exciting, you know, place to be. I think that's probably one of the other reasons why many people like the early years, because that ever-changing landscape keeps you excited, interested. It's not the same old. And I think, you know, with all the new initiatives or the new, you know, there'll be a lot of research. I know Jill's been doing some research at the moment on the impacts of COVID, and the impacts of COVID on children, families, staff. You know, that's really very interesting. And I think, you know, that type of understanding can only enrich the workforce.
Absolutely, thank you for that. It's a sector you can't fake. You can't go to early years with not loving the early years, can you? And I think that passion and that enthusiasm comes through, no matter how long you've worked in the sector. I've had many people come up to me and say, "Oh, I'd love to do what you do because you look so happy in your job." And I think a lot of us, all of us, are showing that tonight, aren't we? Does anybody else want to join in on that last question before I pass back over to Janet? Okay, Paul, thank you.
Yeah, I just think it's key not to be fearful of failure. Obviously, if we didn't take those first steps and we didn't take that jump, we wouldn't be any further on in anything really. I'm a keen believer in lifelong learning and having a growth mindset. And I think with education, that is the gateway to a lot of fantastic opportunities and life experiences. And I would promote anybody, no matter your gender, no matter your background, no matter your religious beliefs. If you are keen and passionate to work with young people, then go for it, because you can give something to that young person's life and set them on a journey that you probably wouldn't even guess would sort of happen. You couldn't even predict that it would happen. And I feel very lucky that during the course of my educational journey, I have had those male role models as well as female role models that have played a major part in my own sort of development thus far. And even in my current role, I'm always working with teachers and educators and lots of different settings, and just the work that they do is fantastic. And even working with some of the academics in the university at the minute who were my academics as a student, the work that they're doing and the journeys that they've been on, it is really empowering, and it's something that I do feel that we should try and instill in the next generation, and try and get more young men, or just men in general, coming into the profession and obviously having that impact. Because if we get more young men and men coming in now, the next generation, it will be a lot more accessible to them. And it's a bit of a snowball effect, isn't it, that it'll build up and build up, and soon enough it won't be an issue like any sort of imbalance in society.
Yeah,
That's
thank
lovely.
you.
Thank you, Joe. If you want to round up that question, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Okay. Well, just a point that professional development takes many forms, and of course it can be the quick chat with your, room co-worker at the end of the day, as much as it can be formal courses, training courses. And I think it links to really good leadership. And we asked a lot of questions about whether men and women in early years are actually getting gender awareness training or any, experiencing any professional training that will help them to become more sensitive to gender issues. And we found very, very few people were doing that. But we did find that some settings that had developed a really gender sensitive ethos in the whole school were just doing that all the time, because where there are men in a setting, quite often that does catalyze a lot of interest and talk about gender. And in a well-led setting, there was a lot of that kind of talk happening. In a way that was very beneficial. And just one final point, we did find very interestingly in the Gender Eye project that 13% of men compared with 5% of women were doing apprenticeships. And there did seem to be something interesting about learning on the job, which I think relates to professional development. Maybe that seems to work better for men. I think that's been found in other research too.
It's interesting. That's really interesting, Jo. Sorry, Stacey. Just building on, Jill, what you were saying in terms of the apprenticeships, and also what the London Early Years Foundation have been talking to us on about in the chat, and the fact, that they have a male-only apprenticeship, and how that is supportive of each other, and how that's enabled males to sort of get a foot into the career, which is interesting, isn't it? So that would be something that would be lovely to explore in this sort of forum. So thank you for all of the questions and comments on the chat. Some general comments about the sector in general, which you would expect, which we will comment on and answer. General comments around the T level we will also support you with, and also the careers toolkit. I want to bring it back round to that. This is an interactive, organic, evolving piece of kit that will live on the CAS on the CAS website, that you'll be able to use with your students, whether they're T-level students or not. This is about supporting the sector. This is about supporting your students and the workforce of the future. So anybody who's interested in becoming a student, anybody who's working, studying as a student now, can look at and make good use of that interactive toolkit. It is not just for T-levels, but the T-levels was a good opportunity to launch something where we start to have, maybe a fresh look at the way that we actually recruit, at the way that we develop qualifications, at the way that we actually try and promote education and childcare to students, and just helps us to reflect and think. The last thing for Stacey and I would like to say is just to thank our panel so much. Thank you for your time, for the inspirational stories. I feel inspired. I know that Stacey will, and everybody who's been listening today will take something away from this that is going to help them and how they perceive maybe, or how they work with students individually, some hints and tips for strategies to be able to recruit males into their institution, whether that's from an employer's perspective or whether that's from a centre's perspective, has been absolutely wonderful. We do intend to have more panels, so if you've been on our chat today, beware, you may well be contacted, but thank you so much to our panel today. A virtual clap there for everyone, and the final slide is the contact names. Obviously you've got me there and Stacey and our emails, and last but not least, the careers toolkit. We have purposely not gone through that step by step to show you the interactive, because we want you to explore it. So look at the careers toolkit, get back to us and tell us how other things you would like to see on there, and how we can make it work for you and incorporate all of the things that we've talked about today. And I'm going to leave it in the words of the panel: just do it make a difference, do it from a well-informed position, and enjoy every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.